8:14 hours, Washington, D.C. The heavy oak doors of the Justice Department slammed shut. 300 federal prosecutors were ordered to stand down immediately. Not next week, right now. This was not a routine policy shift. This was a financial shockwave. The DOJ Antitrust Division had just approved an unprecedented measure. On April 23, 2026, they granted U.S. nuclear energy companies a sweeping antitrust defense. They gave them the green light to coordinate mining, to coordinate milling, to coordinate enrichment. They suspended the rules of the free market. Why? Because the United States government is quietly preparing for a massive global war. Acting Assistant Attorney General Omid Asefi stated the Defense Production Act is a powerful tool. He said it addresses issues related to national defense and preparedness programs. But here's what nobody tells you. This is not about preparedness. This is about survival. The DOJ National Security Division reaffirmed their absolute primacy over corporate national security enforcement. They announced $300 million in funding for a new National Fraud Enforcement Division. They are locking down the physical and financial security of the nation. They are hunting down export control violations. They are crushing anyone who leaks critical technology. The government is taking total control of the supply chain, and that was the moment everything changed. The American economy is no longer a civilian enterprise. It is being weaponized. It is being transformed into a wartime engine. The elites are sweeping aside decades of regulations. They are merging massive corporations into a unified defense cartel. They know what is coming. They see the storm gathering on the horizon. But look closer at the actual timeline. The DOJ did not act in a vacuum. They acted because the White House forced their hand. Run the numbers with me. Just 3 days earlier, on April 20th, 2026, President Donald Trump signed a document that altered the trajectory of the global economy. He invoked Section 303 of the Defense Production Act. He targeted the oil sector. He targeted natural gas. He targeted liquid natural gas and coal. The White House officially classified energy shortfalls as a severe national defense risk. This is the exact same legal mechanism used during World War II to build tanks and bombers. Now it is being used to secure the grid. They are overriding environmental regulations. They are overriding standard commerce laws. They are building a wartime energy cartel. What they did not know was that energy is just the fuel. The real target is the war machine itself. The American taxpayer is about to foot the bill for the largest military expansion in human history. The energy sector is being mobilized because you cannot fight a global war without diesel. You cannot launch a strike group without aviation fuel. You cannot power a shipyard without massive amounts of electricity. The DPA invocation proves that the Pentagon expects severe supply chain disruptions. They expect foreign adversaries to target our energy infrastructure. They are preparing for a world where global trade completely collapses. A world where the Strait of Hormuz is permanently closed. A world where the South China Sea becomes a massive naval graveyard. This is a bankrupt strategy for peacetime, but this is not peacetime. We are already in the opening phases of a shadow war. The DOJ antitrust exemption for nuclear energy is the ultimate fail-safe. If the oil stops flowing, the nuclear reactors must keep the lights on. The military-industrial complex requires infinite power, and the government just gave them the keys to the kingdom. But the Pentagon did not stop there. On April 21, 2026, the Department of War released the fiscal year 2027 defense budget. They requested an absolutely historic $1.5 trillion. That is not a typo. $1.5 trillion. They called it Unleashing the American Arsenal of Freedom. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth stood before the cameras and announced a staggering 42% budget increase. He said this money will supercharge the defense industrial base. He said it will expand American military dominance for decades to come. Think about that for a second. $1.5 trillion. That is the annual tax contribution of millions of American families. It is an astronomical sum, but here's the terrifying truth. It might not be enough. $756.8 billion is allocated specifically to rebuild the defense industrial base. The Pentagon is panicking. An April 13th White House report exposed a terrifying reality. U.S. manufacturing has collapsed to just 10% of the gross domestic product. The defense sector has lost 2.1 million skilled workers over the last 2 decades. We simply do not have the hands to build the weapons we need. If a major war breaks out in the Pacific, we run out of precision munitions in 8 days. 8 days. After that, the fleet has to fight with rocks. The unclassified 2026 National Defense Strategy officially designates supercharging the industrial base as its 4th line of effort. They are preparing for protracted, high-intensity conflicts, not short skirmishes, multi-year wars of attrition, wars that will consume ships, aircraft, and human lives at a rate we have not seen since 1945. The $1.5 trillion budget is a desperate attempt to buy time, to rebuild the factories that were offshored decades ago, to train a new generation of welders and engineers. But why now? Why the sudden panic? Because right now, the United States military is engaged in an active, escalating conflict with Iran. This is not a proxy skirmish. This is a direct confrontation. 0517 hours, 42 kilometers off Iran's Kish Island. The radar screens erupted. 60 contacts, not 10, not 20. 60 Iranian speedboats materializing from the pre-dawn darkness of the Strait of Hormuz, like a plague of steel and diesel fury. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps thought they could choke the global economy. They thought their fast attack boats and cheap drones could paralyze the waterway where 1/5 of the world's oil passes every single day. They launched a swarm of $20,000 kamikaze drones. The U.S. Navy responded with $4.3 million SM-6 interceptors. For every dollar Iran spends, the American taxpayer spends $215 to defend the fleet. That is a bankrupt strategy. No nation on Earth can afford to win that way. The math of danger is working against us. 5,000 American sailors aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln CVN-72 were suddenly fighting for their lives. 38 minutes. That is all it took to transform Iran's perfect ambush into a perfect catastrophe. The American strike group unleashed hell, but the strategic reality remains grim. The conflict has driven oil prices to 2-month highs. It has triggered massive global supply chain disruptions. The entire world economy is shaking. The DOJ knows that if Iran can cause this much chaos with cheap drones, a peer adversary like China could completely break the system. This is why the antitrust rules were suspended. This is why the DPA was invoked. The Iranian conflict is a massive stress test, and the American industrial base is failing that test. That is exactly why the 2027 budget includes $65.8 billion for the Golden Fleet, 18 new Battle Force ships, massive shipyard infrastructure upgrades. This is the largest maritime industrial base demand signal since World War II. We are talking about Ford-class aircraft carriers. A single Ford-class carrier costs $13 billion. We are talking about Flight 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, equipped with AN/SPY 6AMDR radar systems. Radars with a detection range exceeding 300 nautical miles. The Navy needs ships that can survive a saturated missile environment. They need hulls in the water. Right now, American shipyards are operating at a fraction of their Cold War capacity. The Chinese maritime militia has more vessels than the entire U.S. Navy. The force ratio is completely skewed. The Pentagon is trying to buy its way out of a strategic deficit. They are throwing $65.8 billion at a problem that took 30 years to create. But here is what nobody tells you. You cannot build a destroyer overnight. It takes years. It takes thousands of highly specialized workers that the defense sector lost long ago. The Golden Fleet is a beautiful concept on paper, but in reality, it is a race against time. A race against an enemy that is already producing ships at a terrifying rate. The DOJ antitrust exemption is designed to clear the bureaucratic red tape, to allow defense contractors to share resources, to force competitors to collaborate. The government is essentially creating a massive, state-sponsored shipbuilding monopoly. They believe this is the only way to accelerate production. But ships alone will not save us. The threat is no longer just on the surface of the ocean. The threat is coming from the sky, and it is moving faster than anything we have ever seen. The Pentagon also requested $18 billion to operationalize America's Golden Dome. This is a next-generation space-based missile defense shield. It is designed to protect the U.S. homeland from hypersonic glide vehicles. It protects against intercontinental ballistic missiles. The threat matrix has evolved. The enemy is no longer relying on slow cruise missiles. They are building weapons that travel at Mach 5, weapons that can strike Washington or New York in minutes. A Shahab-3 ballistic missile with a 2,000-kilometer range is a regional threat, but a hypersonic weapon is a global nightmare. The Golden Dome is the only thing standing between the American people and total nuclear devastation. $18 billion is a massive investment in homeland defense. It signals a fundamental shift in strategy. For decades, the United States relied on power projection. We fought wars on foreign soil. We kept the enemy far away from our shores. But the Pentagon knows that the next war will not be contained. The next war will reach the homeland. The Golden Dome utilizes advanced orbital sensors and kinetic interceptors. It is designed to track and destroy threats before they re-enter the atmosphere. But look closer at the engineering reality. Building a space-based shield requires massive amounts of energy. It requires highly advanced nuclear power systems. This is exactly why the DOJ granted antitrust exemptions to the nuclear supply chain. They need the uranium. They need the enrichment facilities. They need the reactors to power the ground stations and the orbital platforms. The entire system is interconnected. The DPA invocation, the DOJ ruling, the $1.5 trillion budget. It is all part of one massive unified plan to fortify the United States against an apocalyptic strike. But there is one final piece to this puzzle, and it is the most terrifying of all. The fiscal year 2027 budget includes a 24,166% funding increase for the Departmental Autonomous Warfighting Group. DAWG, that is $54.6 billion dedicated entirely to drone swarms, not remote-controlled planes, fully autonomous, intelligent, attritable drone swarms. The Pentagon realized they cannot win a war of attrition against China or Iran using only multi-million-dollar platforms. They need mass. They need thousands of cheap, lethal drones that can overwhelm enemy air defenses. They are building a robotic army. $54.6 billion is an astronomical leap. It means the military is moving away from human-centric warfare. They are handing the keys over to artificial intelligence. Imagine 10,000 autonomous drones launching simultaneously from a converted cargo ship. They communicate with each other. They select their own targets. They execute the mission without human intervention. This is not science fiction. This is the immediate future of combat. The DAWG initiative is designed to flip the math of danger in our favor. Instead of firing a $4.3 million missile at a $20,000 drone, we will launch a $5,000 drone to destroy a $100 million radar installation. We will drown the enemy in cheap, intelligent steel. But building these swarms requires massive manufacturing capacity. It requires millions of microchips. It requires rare earth metals. It requires a supply chain that is completely immune to foreign interference. This brings us right back to the DOJ bombshell. The government is clearing the path for defense contractors to build these swarms at an industrial scale. They are removing all legal obstacles. They are preparing to flood the battle space with autonomous weapons. And that was the moment everything changed. The nature of war itself is being rewritten. What does all of this mean for the American economy? It means the free market is essentially on pause. The government is directing capital. They are directing resources. They are deciding which industries survive and which ones are absorbed into the war machine. The $1.5 trillion budget is a massive injection of fiat currency into the defense sector. This will inevitably lead to inflation. The cost of raw materials will skyrocket. The cost of labor will surge. The American taxpayer will bear the burden of this massive military buildup. The DOJ National Security Division is enforcing this new reality. With $300 million in funding, the new National Fraud Enforcement Division will ensure that corporate America complies with the wartime mandates. If a company tries to export critical technology, they will be crushed. If a company tries to bypass the supply chain restrictions, they will be dismantled. The government is building an economic fortress. They are preparing for a scenario where global trade networks completely collapse. The active conflict with Iran is just a preview. The disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz are just a warning shot. When the real war begins, the oceans will become impassable. Supply lines will be severed. The United States must be entirely self-sufficient. We must mine our own uranium. We must drill our own oil. We must build our own ships. We must manufacture our own drones. The Defense Production Act invocation was the first step. The DOJ antitrust exemption was the second step. The $1.5 trillion budget is the execution phase. The pieces are all in place. The board is set. The climax of this massive geopolitical shift is happening right now, behind closed doors in Washington. The elites have realized that the post-Cold War era of undisputed American hegemony is over. The adversaries have caught up. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard crews manning those attack boats believed their commanders' promises. They believed speed and numbers would crash through American defenses like a tidal wave through a sandcastle. They had trained for months. What they did not know was that they were about to face the most sophisticated killing machine ever deployed at sea. But the Pentagon knows that technological superiority is not enough. You need mass. You need industrial capacity. You need a nation that is entirely mobilized for war. The DOJ bombshell was the signal. The government is no longer pretending that everything is normal. They are tearing up the rulebook. They are allowing monopolies to form because a monopoly is easier to control during a national emergency. They are centralizing power. They are centralizing production. The $756.8 billion allocated to the defense industrial base is a desperate attempt to resurrect the ghost of American manufacturing, to bring back the 2.1 million workers that were lost, to restart the factories that have been silent for decades. This is a monumental task. It is the equivalent of turning an aircraft carrier around in a bathtub. But they have no choice. The clock is ticking. The enemy is watching. The active conflict in the Middle East is draining our reserves. Every SM-6 interceptor fired in the Red Sea or the Persian Gulf is one less interceptor we have for the Pacific. The math is brutal. The stakes are existential. The United States is facing a multi-front threat environment that dwarfs anything seen in modern history. The DOJ Antitrust Division did not just approve a voluntary agreement. They authorized the creation of a national security juggernaut. Nuclear energy companies are now operating as a unified front. They will coordinate mining operations in Wyoming. They will coordinate milling operations in Utah. They will coordinate enrichment facilities across the country. They are building a closed-loop system, a system that cannot be disrupted by foreign sanctions, a system that cannot be starved by a naval blockade. This is the ultimate insurance policy. When the global energy markets collapse in 72 hours, the American war machine will still have power. The aircraft carriers will still deploy. The radar networks will still scan the skies. The drones will still launch. But here's the terrifying reality that the government is trying to hide. Even with a $1.5 trillion budget, even with the Defense Production Act, even with the DOJ antitrust exemptions, we are still playing catch-up. The adversaries have spent the last 20 years building their industrial base while we dismantled ours. They have built massive shipyards. They have secured critical mineral supply chains in Africa and South America. They have trained millions of engineers. The United States is trying to reverse 2 decades of industrial decline in a matter of months. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth knows this. He knows that a 42% budget increase is just a down payment. The real cost of rebuilding the arsenal of freedom will be measured in trillions, not billions, trillions. And the American people will pay that price. They will pay it at the gas pump. They will pay it at the grocery store. They will pay it through inflation and reduced purchasing power. The economy is being permanently restructured. The civilian sector is being subordinated to the military sector. This is what a wartime economy looks like. It is not just about building tanks and planes. It is about controlling resources. It is about directing human capital. The DOJ National Fraud Enforcement Division is the enforcer of this new regime. They have $300 million to ensure absolute compliance. They will audit defense contractors. They will monitor supply chains. They will prosecute anyone who prioritizes profit over national security. The era of the globalized free market is officially dead. We have entered the era of fortress economics. The active conflict with Iran is the catalyst. It proved that the current system is too fragile. A handful of cheap drones launched by a regional power caused massive disruptions. Imagine what a coordinated attack by a superpower would do. Imagine a scenario where multiple undersea internet cables are severed, where satellite networks are blinded by kinetic strikes, where the Strait of Malacca is mined, where the Taiwan Strait becomes a war zone. The United States military would be completely cut off. They would have to fight with whatever they have on hand. That is why the 2026 National Defense Strategy emphasizes supercharging the industrial base. It is the fourth line of effort, but it is the most critical. Without ships, you cannot project power. Without missiles, you cannot defend the fleet. Without drones, you cannot win. The DAWG initiative is the ultimate wildcard. $54.6 billion for autonomous swarms. This is the Pentagon's asymmetric response to the enemy's numerical superiority. If we cannot build ships fast enough, we will build drones. Millions of them. We will turn the sky black with attritable, intelligent machines. These swarms will act as a massive, distributed sensor network. They will overwhelm enemy air defenses with sheer volume. They will force the enemy to exhaust their expensive interceptors on cheap, expendable targets. It is the exact same strategy Iran is using against us right now in the Middle East. But the Pentagon is going to scale it up by a factor of 10,000. They are going to industrialize drone warfare.